You're listening to or watching the Mental Health Today show. My name is John Cordray, and I am a licensed therapist. And today, my special guest, she is a therapist as well. She's, in fact, the VP of Clinical Operations and co-owner of Sophros Recovery. And so we're going to be talking about, yes, we're going to be talking about recovery. We're going to be talking about addiction, anxiety, and depression. But don't tune it out. So if you're thinking, I don't have an addiction, or I don't have anyone that I know has an addiction, don't tune us out, because we're going to be going over a lot of things that don't only, not just applies to addiction, but applies to a lot of things with mental health. So, but chances are, I know the statistics out there, chances are you probably know somebody that maybe struggles with addiction, even if it's a friend of a friend who has a brother or a sister that struggles. It'd be good for you to know this and listen, so it gives you more insight on how to help them. But without further ado, I want to welcome Erin Moran. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat today.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to learn more about the Recovery Treatment Center. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us your story.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a big question, but I'll try and just sort of keep it like a snapshot overview of me. So you mentioned I am a therapist. I kind of stumbled into the field of therapy, and I say stumbled because I fought wanting to become a therapist. For years, I had people saying, I think you should become a therapist. You'd be really good at this, and I was like, why would I ever want to do that? It was meant
And
to
here you
be.
are.
Here I am, and I absolutely love this field, and I'm glad that those seeds were planted early on. And my sister's also a therapist, so I kind of followed her lead in that. And I love this field. I love just the human condition, and it's complex and simple all at the same time. And I love just creating a safe space, and we might get into that later. My workplace, creating a safe space there. Um, but even the world of addiction, that's also, I should be careful what I say I'm not going to do. Because that was also something that I said, like, I don't really want to work in addiction. Like, that's the one population, addiction and eating disorders. I don't think I want to do that. And again, here I am. Through my journey, I kind of fell into that and love it. I absolutely love this population. It's hard, it's challenging. There's a lot of hurdles, but it's so rewarding. Because it's such and I say the human condition. There's such a thread of people struggling, and yes, I see people struggling with misusing of a substance, but throughout my whole career and even existing when I said I didn't want to be a therapist, seeing how hard sometimes life can be. And, we tell ourselves like it shouldn't be that hard to just do what we need to do, but sometimes it is. Sometimes talking about anxiety and depression, sometimes getting up and, I say for some people, even just brushing our teeth can
Mhm.
be really hard. Um, and so I've seen that like there's such a need for learning the skills and the tools to navigate life in a healthier way, in a more balanced way. And a lot of people who do misuse and abuse substances have really numbed their ability to cope. Um,
Mm.
so I kind of just fell into this. I have a lot of family, unfortunately, that struggles with substance use, and so that's probably why I didn't want to initially
Mm.
work in this population. Um, but like I said, I'm so grateful that I accidentally stumbled into it, and now have been in it in this particular population for probably about 6 years. I've been a licensed therapist for almost 10. Um, and yeah, I'm just incredibly grateful to be able to shine light on an alternative path
Mm.
of coping and navigating life. And, it's a little bit about me, but it's a little bit more about like how I fell into this world of addiction.
Yeah. I find so often, I talk to a lot of other therapists on the show, and I find often that their life path kind of created their career. And so they help people out of their pain. And I think that's what makes a therapist a good therapist, because they can have that empathy. They know what it's like, and yet they have the skills in the training to be able to help people. And so I think that's great. So I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that that you're a part of this and you have Sophros Recovery to help people with addiction. And it almost seems like it found you rather than you found it.
In a lot of ways, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Well, let's
absolutely.
talk about that. So you mentioned, and I totally agree, that people who are struggling with mental health, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's depression, or both, or something else. Maybe it's grief, and something happened in a person's life that maybe they went and decided to self-medicate. And we're talking about really any form of addiction, and they're wanting to escape the pain.
Yes. Yes.
And that makes sense, right? So that's a common thing for humans. We don't want pain. We want to feel better. And so, but there are times where people choose the wrong path to try to get better, and then they end up on some addiction and they're not getting better. In fact, it's worse. And then they
Yep.
build a hole and they dig a hole, they fall in the hole and they can't get out of it. And that's where Sophros Recovery comes in, right?
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about Sophros. And I know before we came on to record, you had mentioned that you had just opened another treatment center. That's awesome. Tell us a little bit first about what is Sophros Recovery, who it's for, and what can someone expect if they are a part of that treatment center.
Yeah. So Sophros Recovery is and I'm going to use these words and I'm going to explain what they are, but it's a partial hospitalization or PHP or intensive outpatient IOP. What do those mean? Even when I became initially a therapist, I was like, I don't know what that means. I tell people it is really like a full-time or a part-time job. It's something that's a little bit more intensive than if you were just to see a therapist, for an hour or two a week. That's like outpatient therapy. Um, Wonderful, super helpful. But sometimes when someone is really struggling, and this can be with using a substance, but generally it is the anxiety, it is the depression, it is the trauma, it's the work stress, it's the family strain. It's sort of life is getting out of control and I need a little bit more TLC, a little bit more support. So the minimum that people come to us is for anywhere from 9 to 12 hours a week. The maximum is, man, almost like 24 or so hours. They're there Monday through Friday, 9 to 4 with a lunch break. So that's why I say it's like a part-time or full-time job. And it's that intensive component in which you are getting therapists, you're doing group therapy, meeting with individual therapists. We have a medical team. So you're meeting with a doctor, nurses. You're really kind of getting all eyes on you um, in this treatment. So I tell people it's a couple things. Like one, it's therapy. It's practicing being more open, more honest, relating to other people, starting to realize that we're not as alone as we might think we are. But it's also learning skills and tools. So this is where I say how to human healthier. Um, this is communication skills, what is assertive communication? What does that look like? What are boundaries? Um, Getting more in touch with, well, what am I feeling? And how do I notice what that does? What does anger feel like in my body? And how do I want to express anger or sadness or grief or joy or any of these emotions? Um, what are alternative coping skills? So coming up with a list and figuring out what does that look like? What can I do as a coping skill by myself, with other people, at day, at night, all of these different things, distress tolerance skills. So we're really learning just how to navigate life, and how to human healthier. And then our third is we really like to kind of do mind body. We want to teach mindfulness. We practice, healthy movements. So I don't really necessarily say like full on exercise with that, but it's just connecting more to body awareness and how to stretch, how to move, how to breathe, nutrition, and sort of that health and wellness. So we really want to make sure that we're addressing as many parts of a human as possible and providing new ways of navigating, again, that are going to be healthier and more balanced. So that's really what treatment is, and we're in Jacksonville, Florida, and then we just opened a separate second location in Tampa, Florida. So,
Yeah, yeah, okay, that's awesome. That's very exciting. And so, do the people that come to you or to the treatment center, do they have to be Florida residents, or could they come in from really practically anywhere in the US?
yeah, yeah. So most people are Florida residents. We have some people who drive in from South Georgia, but we have had people from New York. We've had
Mm,
people from somewhere on the West Coast if they have family members that they could stay with, but we also can connect with a sober living. Um, and so, we could treat people even if it's like, hey, let's get your treatment started in this place, in a place in which you feel really safe, seen, supported. And then you can transition and go back to wherever maybe other state you do live in, but you don't have to be a Florida resident, which is awesome.
yeah, that is awesome. It's not restricted that way. Yeah, okay. So your folks that are full-time, right?
Hmm.
They're there Monday through Friday. And you mentioned a little bit of what to expect. And so what's the capacity? How many people do you have, and what's the age range? I'm really curious about this.
Yeah. So it's adults, anyone who's 18 and over. We kind of have like a bell curve. So there's, a handful who are, 18 to 25. There's a handful who are in their, 60s and 70s. And then I would say the majority tend to be, 30s, 40s, 50s. And that's the thing, addiction is, I think a lot of times we see in our mind we project what we think addiction is, or what we think an
Hmm.
alcoholic is,
Hmm.
or an addict is. Or even someone with mental health, someone who's depressed. We have an idea of what,
Yeah.
this label is. And the reality is it's everyone. It is, yes, someone who maybe is houseless and they've lost, everything. And it's also the CEO of a company,
Mhm.
who's a multimillionaire. It's the soccer mom who is the one baking cookies for the kids. It is, your doctor, it's your dentist, it's your
Mhm.
lawyer. We've had it all. Um, and so you won't just be walking by being like, that's a person struggling with an addiction. That's a person struggling with mental health. It's a disease that doesn't addiction is sort of a disease that doesn't really care who you are.
Mm.
Because like I said, being a human can be really hard sometimes.
Yeah.
And it does numb. It sort of works, but
Mhm.
it works with consequences.
Right.
And so that's what we really want to come in is sort of being like, how can we create other ways of coping that we don't have to numb out? We don't have to go offline. Because if you take a part of you offline, you're taking everything else offline too.
Mhm.
And that's what we really want to prevent. We see the consequences get worse over time. Your ability to manage stress, your work relationships, your romantic relationships, your relationships with your parents or your children, all of these things do get worse. Sometimes there's legal issues, financial
Mhm.
stuff, health issues. Like we see the consequences definitely increase over time. They're just going to look different for different people. So, yeah, anyone who's over the age of 18, we try to really keep our groups at, 12 to 14 max. Maybe some of our like education and skill groups, they might go a little bit higher. But really those therapy and those like, really interpersonal groups, we want those to be a little bit more small and intimate. And so we just keep splitting our groups. We
Mhm.
once had one morning group and now we have three morning groups. So as we grow, we've expanded offices in our Jacksonville location. We're now in our attic space. We're everywhere. So we're knocking down walls. We're just trying to make more room, and there's magic, I think, to what we do, and it's not just, teaching the skills, it's how
Mm.
we do it. And I think when we create a space of safety and we really believe in what we do, and when my team is given the support for them to do this hard work, you can just walk in and you can feel it that
Mm.
people care, and that this is hard, but you have a team of people who really believe in you. And for some people, that's a first time brand new
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah,
And it's
because
huge.
yes, it is huge, and a lot of people who are struggling with addiction, they don't believe in themselves anymore.
Yeah.
There's a
A lot
lot
of
of
shame.
guilt. Yeah, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame,
Yep.
a lot of regret,
Yep.
and they get
Yeah.
to a place where it's almost a point of no return unless they
Yeah.
actually make the call. I've got to do something, or something bad is going to happen. And
Yeah.
so people who are listening to this, I think, can really resonate and really can relate to this. And I know that there are people who are listening that maybe they have a spouse or a loved one or a child who is struggling. They see it, but the individual is not seeing it. They'll deny it, right? And so, I don't have a
Yes.
problem. I'm fine. I just need this to get over this, and I'll quit next week, and all these excuses.
Mhm.
And yet their loved ones see it. It's affecting them, and sometimes it gets too much, and you feel like there's nowhere to turn. And I think that's a testament of your facility at Sophros, that it's growing and growing and growing because there's a huge need, and you're
Mhm.
filling the need, and you're helping individuals with that, because a lot of people don't know where to turn.
Yeah.
And to your point,
Yes.
a lot of times people have in their mind of what a uh, what does a residential place look like, or what does a rehab, what does that mean? And they have all
Mhm.
these ideas, and typically we get the ideas from a movie, right? So,
Yes.
and movies don't just they don't portray this as a place of safety and healing. It's usually portrayed as not good at all.
Uh-huh.
So I like what you mentioned too, that addiction affects everybody, and you cannot see, you can't tell, because people are really good at masking it and hiding it.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
what would be something so thinking of that person who is listening to this, and maybe either they are struggling with addiction and they realize, I've got to do something, or somebody is listening to this and they're thinking of a loved one. What would be something that you would encourage them? Because obviously you have this facility, it's growing, it's blossoming, and many people are getting help. But there are so many other people who are kind of stuck in that. What would be something that you would encourage them to think about?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is I say this even to my team. So I practice it to my team all the time. My
Mhm.
team does it then with our clients. I say, let's talk about it. If it exists, we bring it into the room. So we're not going to have an elephant in a room
Mm.
and be like, oh, let's just walk this way. Like we are always being like, hey, I see an elephant. Let's address it. Like we might not be able to remove the elephant, but we're surely going to talk about it.
Mm.
Um, so I really encourage loved ones to have those conversations. You know, some of them are really sometimes people are like, "Oh, I don't want to upset them," or "I'm afraid
Yeah.
they might get angry." That's
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
You know, anger, like let people get angry, but we are going to address what we're seeing. We're going to come from a place of like, I feel scared, I feel sad, I'm concerned. You know, really kind of owning our own feelings with it
Yeah.
and then saying, I really wish that you would get help. Sometimes then it comes to setting boundaries with consequences of, you know, if you don't, I'm seeing this is going down a really dark path and I will not continue to financially support you, or I will have to, you know, leave the house or something. That's hard.
Mm.
Um, but I think for families, it's really making sure we are talking about it. You know, we're not walking in eggshells. We're not pretending it doesn't exist. We're not saying, oh, I don't want to upset them. We're going to upset them
Mhm.
because they're going to know that we see it.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
see it. We see them. We love them. We care about them and we want them to get help. And if it's the person who is struggling or if they're kind of wrestling with themselves, and I will say, are aware that there's a problem. They're trying to hide that and trying to be like, maybe not. They're definitely lying to themselves,
Mm.
uh, but they know deep down they know. And I think for those people who are on the fence, just pick up the phone and ask and call, like ask for help. And where I you know, talk to your families.
Mhm.
There's SAMHSA. A lot of times that's the addiction world, and you can find treatment centers that way. You know, Googling treatment centers and sometimes just picking up the phone. So I know our person, her name is Elaine. She's lovely and amazing. And if someone is too far away or they're like, oh, it's, you don't have my insurance, she will be like, I will find you a place and I will
Nice.
get you in touch with that person. So it's not just a doors closed, we can't help you. it's, well, let's see, maybe we can get a single case agreement with your insurance. Maybe we can do a partial scholarship, and if it's not us, then like we're going to make sure that you're with somewhere else. So hopefully most places will do that, but if not every single one, most will.
Mhm.
Um, because people who are in this field want to see people heal, want to see people recover, and people can. That's the beautiful thing is like we have so many people on our staff who are in recovery and are like, the life that I live today, I never thought it was possible.
Mhm.
And they're some of the most inspiring, amazing people because they know what it's like to be in the darkness and have to fight up and have to continuously, daily focus on like what do I need to do to live my healthiest, best life. Um, so yeah, I think just talking about it and I think asking for help. Those are the those are the most important things.
I like that. And those are probably two of the most difficult things to do, right?
100%.
Talk about it. And need to bring this up because a lot of people are really worried if they bring it up, it'll make it worse.
Yep.
That they'll disown them, they'll go off, they'll never hear from them again, they'll get into drugs more, alcohol more, gambling more, whatever addiction that they're struggling with, that it might make it worse. But that's not the
Yeah.
case. I mean, it might make them upset because who wants to hear that they need to
Yes.
get help, right? Who wants to hear
Uh-huh.
that? That's okay. And in fact, that is to be expected because in a way, bringing it up as a boundary that you're saying, hey, I see something that you're struggling with. It's not only affecting you, it's affecting us. And so
Yeah.
we've got to do something. And so to expect that the other person that you're talking to is going to get upset, I think that's okay to know, first of all, to make
Yeah.
that
It's
tough decision.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable, but it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be uncomfortable. And then the person who decides, yeah, I do have a problem. I need to make that call. I need to ask for help. At the very least, if you don't make the call yourself, go to someone that you trust and say, I need help. Can you help me?
Yep. Yep.
That's hard, right, to admit it. Because at least from my experience as a therapist talking to others who are struggling, they convince themselves that they don't really have a problem because they compare somebody else that they know. Well, I'm not as bad as that person,
Yes.
so I can get over this myself. I don't need help.
Yep.
But
Yep.
in your experience, if you keep saying that, you're never going to get help and you're going to get worse and you can't get out of this hole without someone helping you out of the hole.
Yeah.
Very rare, wouldn't you say, Erin? That's very rare that somebody can overcome addiction by themselves.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
rare.
It's incredibly, and the people who I think that you can get sober, maybe on your own, um, but then that's what the term of like a dry drunk. That's somebody who maybe I'm not using the substance, but I'm still engaging
Yeah.
in all these unhealthy patterns.
Yeah.
I still am not setting boundaries. I still have really poor communication. I still emotionally react so quickly. I still struggle to, know how to cope with things that are really hard and stressful. So there still might be other forms. And that's where I say like addiction isn't just substances. It could
Yeah.
be our relationship with food. It
Yeah.
could be our relationship with other people. It could be codependency. It could be, gambling. It could be video games. It could be some of these
Mhm.
things that are just numbing, that
Mhm.
are avoiding, that are
Mhm.
just shopping, some sort of distractions as opposed to being like, wow, I'm having a feeling that is really maybe hard or uncomfortable. What is it communicating with me? What do I need? Do I need a boundary? Do I need some rest? Do I need to, challenge myself to maybe step out of my discomfort? And so that's where it's like, I want people to be in recovery, not just sober. I want people
Yeah.
to learn how to navigate life and feel better about it, feel
Mm.
connected to themselves, to other people, to the world around them. Because as humans, we all deserve that.
Totally agree. I think you said that very, very well. And in a lot of times we don't look at the root cause. And you mentioned this. You can stop maybe one compulsion, but if you don't get to the right cause or get to the root of it, you're just going to transfer it to something else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so you have to be able to identify where it's coming from and then learn the tools to work through it. And that's what Sophros Recovery does, right? It helps them. It's not like you just take them away from their environment. You teach them and you help them and you get to the root cause. You help them learn new coping skills, and you also provide accountability there.
Yes.
So it's a safe place, but it's not coming and you can do whatever you want. No, it's looking at where did you get off course? How can you get back on the right track and here keep doing it, maintaining and sustaining a healthy life.
Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah.
Well,
It is awesome.
tell me a little. Tell me. I'm putting you on the spot here. So, I would imagine you probably have at least one. You don't have to go into great detail, but tell me about give me a story of someone who came to Sophros Recovery, and maybe they were, I don't know, they were not expecting to get better, or they came reluctantly, or but they learned and they really blossomed and they were on that road to recovery. I'm sure you have at least one that you can share. You don't have to, again, don't go into detail of who it is, but yeah, just tell me, because I think it's important for people to hear that it's effective, and
Yes.
tell us how it's been effective for some.
Yeah. I oh, I mean, hopefully there's a lot more than one, and from witnessing and experiencing and talking, I think there's so many. Um, and that's the really rewarding. One of our core values is celebration.
Mm.
And so we celebrate each other, we celebrate our clients, and they're our clients are so loyal. Like they're sometimes some of the best sellers of the program. Someone comes into the door and they're like, "You're gonna love it here. This place has changed my life." And
Mm.
that's just so rewarding to hear these stories of people being like, "I never knew this existed. I never
Mm.
knew I could feel this way. I'm learning so much. Like this place has changed my life." That is something that is incredibly rewarding. That's why, me and Nick, who's our CEO, that's why we created this. That's what it's about. But I have one story in particular, and this is a client who really struggled, had been on struggling with substances for a really long time. Um, Really, he knew he needed treatment, so he wasn't really resistant to that, but was really resistant to any close connections.
Mm.
Really resistant to even having the team care for him.
Mm.
Um, and was kind of angry, was very quick to
Mm.
anger. One of our clients who had a good relationship with him kind of called him like a bulldog, um, and in like a playful way. And he kind of got angry with his therapist really early on, like kind of called her a name. Me as the leader had to get involved and
Mm.
sort of set a boundary of like, you're allowed to be angry. There's a lot to be angry about. That's totally valid. There's a healthy and a respectful way to be angry. And there's certain things that are not okay. Um, Calling someone a name is not something that's going to be acceptable. Screaming or slamming a door, not acceptable. But saying, I'm really angry and I need to step out, like you're really getting under my skin, totally okay. Um, this person is night and day. He is when he's like angry now, he's like, I'm really upset, I'm angry, and I'm using my coping skills. And like he has an amazing relationship with his therapist. He's now discharged, but he was with us for a while. He was like, I don't want to leave. Like, you guys have to kick me out of here. Um, but would come in smiling and like come back to my office and being like, hey, and it was just this, we all were like, I never expected this. And when you believe in people, when you set parameters, but also say like, hey, it's my care for you is not conditional. Like it's okay for you to be angry, and it's okay for you to not like something that I'm doing. As therapists, we're human and we're gonna make mistakes. So like, please be angry with me. Let's just talk it through and have a dialogue. And I think having a safe space and having consistency and really knowing what the parameters are, I mean, night and day. And he has been sober. He has like developed really healthy relationships. He set boundaries and cut people out of his life who weren't good for him. And so it was just a story of just being like, wow, what we do really does make a difference. And he had said at the very end that he's like, I don't think I would still be alive if it
Wow.
wasn't for the care that you all gave me. So
Mm,
it matters, and it does make a difference when we just have a safe space and when we have people who can see us and see all parts of us. I
mhm,
think that's what, as humans, we deserve people to see all versions of us and know that, like, it's not too much, that there might be boundaries. There might need to be like, hey, we need to make sure that this thing is adjusted a little bit, but that's okay. This version that maybe has been too much for other people just needs another part that's counterbalancing it.
mm.
And that's where we come in to try and hopefully teach them that counterbalance component.
I
So
like that. And
people can recover.
yes, and I think that's so important to realize that
Yeah.
because I think it goes back to that stigma or the thought process of, what people see on movies or TV, and people keep going to, these treatment centers, and they quit and they leave and it doesn't work and it's terrible, and it's not like that. And so, or at least
Yeah.
most of them are not like that. And I think
Yeah.
it's important to realize that you have tons of stories of clients that have come who have struggled for a variety of reasons, lots
Mhm.
of different backgrounds, but they come and they learn. And you're not telling them they can't be a human. You're teaching them how to express and regulate their emotions. That's
Yeah.
critical. That's so important. And so thank you for that. I'm just really excited about just hearing that, and just knowing that that person, their life has changed. And that's very
Yeah.
humbling, isn't it? It's a humbling to be a
Yes, it
part of that.
is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to
Yeah.
be able to be a part of some people's darkest days
Yeah.
and start to see the glimmer of transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah.
definitely is. Very cool. Well, but I have one more question before I let you go. We've been talking a lot about addiction, and we need to, and I want to bring spotlight Sophros Recovery. But I also want to talk a little bit about what are some, because we talked about tools, we talked about strategies and things that you teach at Sophros Recovery. But what about those who are not quite, maybe they're not addictive, or have an addiction, but they are struggling with mental health. They are struggling with depression and anxiety, and some of those things that are connected a lot of times with addiction, but maybe they don't have an addiction per se. What are some healthy tools that you can recommend? I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but maybe pick one or two that someone can try right now at home.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to my mind is just thinking, okay, addiction. It thrives in secrecy, isolation, avoidance, and shame. And if you don't misuse substances, that's where a lot of our maladaptive, self-destructive, more harmful parts of ourselves also exist in that. So we're saying addiction. You can delete addiction and
Mm,
substance use and just say the parts of me that are not really healthy,
mm,
that are maladaptive, that are a little bit destructive. That could be negative self-talk. That could be, how my anxiety or depression, the behaviors associated with it, the thoughts connected to it. So then what is the antidote? The antidote is we have to practice being open, being honest, being vulnerable, and connecting with other people. And that doesn't mean that everyone is going to be a trustworthy person, but going to a therapist, going to a community of like-minded people. And that's hard because I know a lot of communities are a lot of, religious organizations, or the AA, NA, Smart Recovery, like the recovery community. It's sort of like if you don't fit in those bubbles, where do you go? And I think like really seeking that out, like going to meetups, going to book clubs, going to yoga and meditations, really trying to find, like, going to group therapy,
mm,
seeking if there's any therapy groups, near you, or even online ones. Um, Finding people in which you can be open, honest, vulnerable with, because that allows us to start to hold ourselves accountable for thoughts that are harmful and self-destructive, for behaviors that are really not going to be aligned. If we're not aligned with ourselves, if we're not aligned with our values, we're going to be in a shame spiral really quick. So I mean that's not full therapy strategies, but I would just simply say, like, if we can practice stepping into discomfort. I tell
Mm.
people that is the only way that you are going to have anything different. It's the only way that you're going to change is if you are a little bit, don't dive off the deep end. That'll be a little bit jarring, a little bit too much, but make yourself a little bit uncomfortable. Try something new. You know, that creates neuroplasticity. That allows us to have a new experience is, oh, I'm a little bit uncomfortable. This is new. Wow, now my brain is having to develop alternative ways of coping and thinking. So that's sort of what I would recommend any of us who struggle with, even if it's just a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of depression, a little bit of like, you know, I kind of went to have a couple drinks because I was stressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like guess what? Like you were wanting to numb out a little bit. So
Yeah.
now let's practice some of these other skills.
I like that. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. So take ownership, and be active and proactive
Yeah.
in your health and mental health. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Excellent.
welcome.
Well, Erin, our time is coming to a close here. I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking about Sophros Recovery. Want to encourage you, if you're listening to this or watching on YouTube, check out Sophros Recovery. And can you give us, Erin, the website?
Yeah, so it's Sophros and it's Sophros. It's short for Sophrosinine. So sophrosrecovery.com or Sophros Recovery Tampa if you want to look at a Tampa location.
Nice, nice. Yeah, you had mentioned the name. So tell us really quickly, tell us,
Yeah.
how did the name come about?
Yeah. So that is credit to Nick, our CEO. Um, he wanted a name that didn't exist. And so Sophros is short for sophrosinine, which is a Greek word. It is, it stands for, you know, sound, mind, body, temperance, balance. And so when in Greek mythology, when they opened Pandora's box, all of these evil spirits came out. And so that's why it's like, don't open Pandora's box. But there was one sort of counterbalancing spirit, and that was the spirit of sophrosinine.
Nice. That's really cool.
Yeah.
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 Thank you for that. Well, again,
Yeah.
thanks for coming on, and make sure you check out Sophros Recovery and check that out, especially if you're in the Florida area or if anywhere. If you're struggling or
Yeah.
have a loved one, you can call them, like Erin was mentioning, and even if you're not close, they can help you find one that may be closer to you.
Yeah.
So make sure you check that out. Thank you so much for listening to the Mental Health Today show. As friends, as always, I want you to continue to work on your mental health. I know you will. That's why you're listening to this. All right. Take care, my friends. Until next time. Bye bye.